Good evening, everyone. My name is Gabriel Smalley, and today I have a very special guest. It is someone from the Command Zone podcast and also an actor that you guys know very well. Please welcome Jimmy Wong to the Musicians Network podcast.
Good to be here. Thank you for inviting me. We figured out all of our tech issues and we have arrived at the interview. So I'm very excited.
It was a process, but this is a very talented man. He's
Oh,
doing a
thanks.
podcast and he has a YouTube channel with other people. Go check that out. The Command Zone. They have game nights and other things like that. They're very magic related. They're very talented people, and they have job positions open. So if you're ever living in California, go apply there. They're requiring all different kinds of positions.
Thanks. Yeah, good shout out.
All right, down to business. So to first start out, how did you guys start the podcast? Like, when did it start, and how did you guys start it? What was your initial vision for it?
Okay, great question. So the podcast is all about a card game called Magic the Gathering, which has grown in popularity over the past, it's been around for over 25 years and it's gotten really, really popular recently. A lot more references in mainstream culture, as well as just a bigger player base, and tons of famous people play it as well. And so back in the day, this was about 7 or 8 years ago, we were playing a format, which is now the most popular format called Commander. Magic is typically a one-on-one game, so it's competitive and sweaty. You look at your opponent, you want to beat them and take their life total down to zero. But in Commander, there's 4 players, and it's much more similar to a board game experience. So if you've ever played Settlers of Catan or any other game where you are actually talking to the other players and making a deal, then you are playing a version of what Commander is, which is a lot of deal making around the table. It's a lot more fun, and that's why it's so popular today. But 7 years ago, when we decided to start the podcast, we had been listening to couple other podcasts in the space about Limited, which is another way to play Magic the Gathering, the card game. And we looked at each other, my partner and I, just my business partner Josh and I, and said, "Well, this doesn't exist for Commander, which is what we like to play. So let's just start it." It was just born out of the fact that we had a really great resource and we thought that the world could use more of that resource, but for the thing that we loved. So hopefully we could start teaching people about the game and bringing whatever what we thought was valuable to teach people to each podcast episode. So that was 7 or 8 years ago. And since then, the game has exploded in popularity. We were one of the first, not the first, but we were one of the first Commander podcasts that were out there. And we've just been really lucky to be able to grow and have a great community of people behind us watching all of our content. We make a show called Game Nights, like you said. But that's really the reason why we started. We just saw an open space and decided to do something about it.
Yeah, and I'm actually one of your patrons, by the way. I
Yes, that's
love
how we
seeing
got in
that.
contact originally.
I love seeing all of those, and that's how I contacted you. I joined their Patreon. Join their Patreon, by the way. You get everything a day early. It's great.
Nice, nice. No
But
ads.
you guys were actually one of the, like, I was looking everywhere for something on Commander, like YouTube,
Hmm.
podcasts. I was trying to look for everything, and I just found that you guys were one of the best that I found. And so I wanted to just ask, what connections did you have to really get this started? Like, what did you use? Like, what
Hmm.
equipment did you have? Like,
Yeah, it's a good point. So obviously, it's never cheap to start anything, but podcasts are one of the cheapest things to do because you just need to record your voice, and hopefully, it sounds good because that's a big part of podcasts. And you just start talking to another person. So originally, because we had no video component, all we had were these old microphones that I had for a long time because I used to record a lot of music on YouTube and make music on YouTube. So I had good microphones for recording vocals and all that stuff. So we just used those in my living room of my old apartment where I used to live with my brother Freddie, and we just recorded that. And sometimes we would be at the office at recording because we were both working at Rocket Jump at the time. But yeah, for the most part, we just had 2 microphones, and then it recorded into either you could do it into a computer. So if you're with a computer, there's usually a audio setup, like an interface that you use to plug the mics into, or you just do it to like a recorder. There are a lot of these remote recorders that you can use that just record to an SD card, which is what like cameras and stuff record to. So that was it at first, and it was just me and Josh sitting across from each other at a table and saying the word a bunch and being very bad at it compared to where we are now. So it also meant that we weren't like pros out the gate. We definitely always just took what we had, more importantly, and then we funneled it together into a working setup. So the startup cost was precisely $0 and hours of our time.
all right, and yeah, like I'm recording through Anchor, which is a completely
Hmm.
free website, but it's just one of the best websites that they use for podcasts.
Yep.
And so $0 just to start out a podcast. And before you're doing that, how much money did you spend like doing music? Because you mentioned that you did music before you did this
Yeah.
podcast.
Music is a much more expensive hobby slash passion to pursue because the monetization of it isn't great. Every time you want to do something, it requires more than just a microphone and a friend, like a podcast does. You'd have, obviously programs on the computer that you're writing and editing the music with. You're going to have all of the instruments itself, which could range from very cheap to very expensive, depending on what you're recording. And then there are even different microphones for each instrument. If you really want to get really technical about it, you can use different microphones for all sorts of different things, and that's just an additional cost. And then you'll buy plugins for your software, so that just ends up adding up. I think at the very cheapest, you could just record a cappella songs. Don't worry, be happy. And that would be the cheapest way to do music, but you'd still need a computer that can edit and all that stuff. Now, we also did edit our podcast. I forgot to mention that. That is a startup cost that you can also do for free because you just import the stuff after you have obviously the memory cards and all that stuff, however you record it. Those are all startup costs that a lot of people typically have parts of because we're all work from home at this point. Especially if you're a musician, you already have so many of these tools. So the startup cost for music is a bit more. So it ranges, right? Just add in a guitar on top of, let's say, a program that costs $30 a month. And then you're starting to understand, okay, that's like $500. And then let's say you want to buy a really nice microphone that's like $8,000 to $1,000. And so that's adds up, around 2K. And then you have to write the music, edit it, spend all that time, and hope that people like it.
Yeah, and as you can see, that is a very big contrast from doing podcasts. Like you said, it was $0 to just start it and then even edit it. Like it was
Hmm.
free.
Well,
Whereas
there's
this,
lots of free editing programs out there.
yeah,
Like this video, for instance, your microphone is not like a pro level mic, but you could edit it and you could, record it a little better, maybe put some pillows around you and you could put it into a podcast. So you don't need to buy a fancy mic either. A lot of computers and phones have, especially like those iPhone headphones. I don't know if you've seen people on TikTok singing into iPhone headphones, but it's really high quality audio. So there's just a lot of different ways that people already have within their means to record stuff and get going in terms of podcasts. And that's, a very attractive part of doing a business is you're not sitting there putting money and dumping money into something and not knowing if it's going to pan out the other end.
yeah. Whereas podcasts, it's a lot easier. Just get started and just get going, get it out there.
Yep.
Um, do you when you first started this podcast, were there any connections that you wished you had? Like anyone who knew a certain thing or two?
Yeah, so connections are obviously a huge part of starting to like grow your business. In a lot of ways, we just naturally formed connections with other people that were playing the game because that was our big part of our hobby. And there are a lot of public events where the game can be played as well. And that can really help foster a relationship because you might go to, back then they're called Grand Prix, which is like a place just like a convention hall. And you imagine there's people there. There's like 5 stores selling different cards from all around the region, and there's some sort of tournament for a format, and then there's open tables where you can play Magic just with friends. It's completely free to go, and they'll be held at like your convention center downtown or at a large hotel somewhere. So those used to be a very big thing, and they're going to come back post pandemic, but probably in a different way. Now they're called Magic Fests, and there you'd meet people that play the game, or you go to like a PAX, which is Penny Arcade Expo up in Seattle or Austin, or I think they have one in New York as well, and it's just a big gathering, and there's going to be people that also play the game or share in that same hobby, and then that's where we made a lot of early connections. So people like Loading Ready Run are also big creators out from Vancouver. I'm from Seattle, so we both went to PAX in Seattle, and I definitely have hung out with them and done Magic stuff with them as well at those events. And so those connections we always had. The connections I think we always wanted, and now that we do have, was with the people that made the product. So Magic the Gathering is made by a company called Wizards of the Coast, who we now work great with. They're the people we work with there are really, really fantastic, and we get to make the content we want. And
Can I just say
hopefully,
that is so cool that you actually get to work with Wizards of the Coast? Like
yeah, it's great. It's brand deals. It's
that's so
the
cool.
influencer world. Yeah, I mean, honestly, brands are looking for a trustworthy source that has an audience. And trust is a huge deal because, this is the day and age where a lot of things can get you canceled online or just be on the wrong end of just some criticism that can spiral out of control. It's the internet. Things get dogpiled on. So
Like you can
brands
even
are
get some
really aware of that.
misinformation. Honestly, like one thing could be said wrong, and then suddenly an entire rumor could go out of control.
Yeah, if you've ever played the game Telephone, which is the
Oh,
most basic game ever, it shows you exactly how miscommunication is insane. You can say one sentence and mean the opposite thing by the end of 10 people, or just mean complete nonsense. And that's what happens to a lot of stuff online.
mm.
So content helps, movies, books, anything you read with narratives, they create something that you can follow along.
Yeah, so you really had your connections because of your hobby, and just from the places you went, you just had your connections because you just had a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, people and friends, it didn't help that I'm an extrovert. So going out and going to conventions is something that I find to be fun. And there's, equivalents for this in every single almost industry. Automotive industry, there are trade shows that you can go to, right? Musicians have literally concerts are places where you can meet other musicians. So everything has like an elevated level of attendance based on fandom. Comic Con is like the biggest gathering of people that are just fans of all things nerd culture. That shows how big nerd culture can be, is the size of Comic Con.
Yeah, I'm
And
going to
then,
September, and there's like a bunch of people. Like some of the
yes,
guests on there are huge, and that I used to watch, and it's like, oh my gosh.
yeah, Comic Con's a great place to go. I mean, obviously, all these things cost money as well, but if you're going there with a business sense in mind and you want to make connections and make sure you find, try and get lucky and meet a couple of people that you may potentially want to work with, that's a great, just target to have to at least justify the cost of going to a pretty social event.
Do you think it was easier or harder for people to make connections or to do things during the pandemic when it was in full force, like close down everything?
I definitely miss going to conventions. I loved doing it in the past, and I will love doing it in the future. So that I think didn't help. In a lot of ways, that's a place where you also gain trust. Let's say you hang out with someone for 2 days in a row. You're walking around the convention together. You're talking about stuff. Maybe you get a quick meal outside the convention. You're building trust in that moment, and you can't really build that online in a different way. Now, if you're like taking a weekly meeting with them, or maybe you tweet at them long enough and they tweet at you long enough, you can build some trust there. But you just to have a different kind of relationship get formed. It's a lot of parasocialness, which has been a pretty hot topic these days, which is what is a parasocial relationship between you and someone that you don't actually know, but maybe you just see them tweet a bunch, and you feel an emotion towards that. So a lot more of those kind of like stranger internet bendy relationships form during the pandemic. But I hope that people that who they want to meet in real life. That's I think a great goal of people online and be like, you know what, it'd be interesting to meet with this person. Maybe I know one of their friends. I can meet up with them at a convention or whatever. So that sort of stuff I think is good, but you just can't really build the same amount of trust that you would in person with someone, whether it's a week somewhere or even a day at a place.
Yeah, like literally, that's how I met you. I literally just joined the Patreon. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna message these people through the Patreon only email,
Correct.
and who knows if I'm gonna get a response? But I can just say I contacted the Command Zone, and that is just awesome. And next thing I know, I'm doing an interview with an actor slash co-host of the Command Zone.
Yeah, I
And
think you can contact most people if you just try hard enough. And if you're making content and you're doing it for a group of people that want to hustle and get better and succeed in their careers. So there's a lot of thumbs up in all those categories. So it makes sense to be like, yeah, like if you were someone that had nothing and was like, this is my first episode ever, I'd be like, I would say do a few episodes and then start asking guests on so you get a flow of what's going on. But obviously it helps to just reach out to people, take risks, right? And if nothing happens, if you did it in a respectful way, no harm done, and they're not going to care, you're not going to care, and you can just move on. Everyone moves on.
yeah,
So there's
we
no
definitely had
harm
to
in really
reschedule
trying.
this a couple times. Like
Yes.
this thing just kept coming up. Like, God. Ugh.
Yeah, sometimes that happens. Sometimes you just have to, I don't know, get a personal assistant help you schedule it better. I don't know. I don't know. Scheduling's
I
tough.
don't have the money for that.
Yeah, I don't think you have the need for that either. You
Yeah.
could probably handle
So
most things. Yeah.
I guess another question is what advice would you give to the viewers who are struggling with searching for those connections or are trying to kind of have a job that isn't maybe a what's the word a
Conventional?
a conventional
Yeah.
job.
Well, conventional jobs offer a lot of great things at the end of the day. It's consistency of income, and it also sometimes has healthcare, retirement packages, whatever. There's lots of things that come with working for a place for a while, career advancement, promotions, all that stuff. Unconventional means you're basically piling together the money you need through your own means and not, from one dedicated source. So it's really stressful, obviously. I find that the best way to pursue these things is to do so in a reasonable way because you don't want to burn out because you don't have money in 2 years. It's better to work a side job while you do your thing and grind your hustle. And that way you don't go broke and you can do it for 6 years instead of 2 years. Having more time in the industry is just going to be good. So, especially if you're young, just know that you're going to be working in this field for a while And that year one of anyone, even the most famous and successful people in the world, is not great. They are just getting started. It's when they get to year 8 or 9 or year even 12, 15 that you really have big career advancement. So try not to be so stressed out if you're not meeting someone tomorrow, or if the pandemic's not over yet, you can't go out if you feel frustrated. Just look long term, know that there's a lot of opportunities up ahead, and if anything, gives you a lot more time to plan for it in the meantime, as opposed to feeling rushed or doing something in a hurry. You got to think about it more. Think about what kind of people you want to work with, what kind of people you value, what's important to you, and why you're doing what you're doing. What messages are you trying to really send at the end of the day? And the more time you have to marinate on that, the better you are when you're going to go out and find people and explain to them why you're a musician or why you do what you do. And if they match with that and they find great connection and you guys become friends, you can share advice, you can talk to each other. The deepest level is like beginning to collaborate and work with each other. You can just have friendships out there that are just like, hey, how's it going? Like, oh, you know what? I really respect how this person actually talks about sports because they grew up playing sports and their dad's a coach. And so they really get that side of it. So that's my friendship with them. We got to talk about this thing that I'm really curious in. I don't need him to be a podcast partner and knows about Magic the Gathering. If I required all my friends to know about Magic the Gathering, I wouldn't have very many friends. So, if you're going out there and making connections, just find something that interests you about them and why are you asking them a question? And maybe they'll find good reasons to ask you questions and just see where that takes you. Like, try not to put too much pressure on it. Sometimes you just don't match with people either, and that's totally okay. Trust your gut. Just try and have fun and know that there's a long time before this pandemic's truly over. And so the world's going to take a while to recover. Do what you can to obviously get by right now, but don't stress about making connections. Just start breeding them slowly online, like planting a little garden. Water them with on Twitter or Instagram or wherever you follow people, or Facebook, whatever you use. There's tons of groups and stuff everywhere. You can always find people that way too.
Yeah, like Musician Network is completely nonprofit. We don't get any of the money that our people make, and we fully expect to just help people go off. And so something like I think this will be one of the last questions I'll ask is
Mhm.
how like not only are you a podcaster, but you're also an actor. Like
Oh yeah.
you're in Mulan, right? You were
Yes, correct.
how in the heck did you become an actor? Like everyone asks this, like, oh, how do you become an actor? Like some people assume you're born into it, and some people just assume like, oh,
Right.
you're just picked off the street. Like
Well, I
how did
started I started podcasting 7 or 8 years ago, and I started acting like 14 years ago. So it's also something I've been doing for a long, long time. What I said earlier, I wasn't joking. If you really want to grow a business and have it work, it might take you 6 years before you start really making some kind of money, right? Like that's it's art. It's a really hard world to break into, and companies in general, the company that you're going to work for that gave you that steady income took a while to break into too. So acting was something that took just as long for me, and it was a huge journey of passion and almost treating acting like my side job and treating YouTubing as my main job, if that makes sense. Like, because opportunities didn't come along as often as they do now, and they still don't come along very often compared to people that are white, basically. Because I'm always trying to get Asian roles, and they're not going to cast me unless they're looking for an Asian, especially in 2010, 11, 12 through 20. I've been in LA since 2011.
oh my
Um,
gosh.
and it's only started to recently change and trend upwards recently, which is great. It's where it's destined to go and match sort of like what the percentage population is Asian as well. Like there should be around that to be properly represented. Um, so it took a long time, and I had to almost wait for the world to catch up before I was given bigger and bigger opportunities. Like a movie like Mulan and a movie like Wish Dragon and a movie like Shang-Chi would not have happened in 2010 or
Mm.
11 or 12. There's no way. So starting acting all the way back then and having that much experience also has really helped. And just so I can handle situations better, I have longer and older connections that are connected to different parts that are either looking out for jobs on my behalf, or if something comes across their desk and they can think of me, they'll send it my way. And that's sort of a huge part of acting, is just like getting in people's good book and making sure that you're working with people that want to help you and want to be your agent or manager or whatever it is. It's a very sort of like tag along business for those people. So maintaining your relationships is really important, as well as delivering. You obviously can't suck. There are a lot of, I think, personally, I wouldn't rate my acting ability as like super high up there compared to the people I really respect. But there's a whole range of talent in actors, and some people are great, and some people are great doing a one specific thing. Some people are great at like 20 different things. Some people are great at only two things, but that greatness can be made into an actor. And so figuring out what your special sauce is and where that fits into the entertainment world is tough, but you just got to keep trying at it. You have to get rejected like 1,000 times before you get said yes to once. I think that's about my hit rate is like 1 in 500 or something, just historically, if you want to know how unlikely it is to get jobs.
Oh my gosh. So you're basically saying is the key to really doing an unconventional job is determination.
I
And
mean, persistence and patience. Yeah, there's a lot of that
basically, if you're doing an unconventional job, be prepared to get some rejections. Like
in general. Yeah.
be prepared to not be a success right off the bat.
Well, I mean, if you think you're going to be successful off the bat, you feels like you've never done anything in your life. I mean, there's never a single thing that I've done. If I haven't done it before, I'm like, I'm just going to kill it when I do this thing. It's like, no way. Like when I try to play soccer, it's a very grim reminder of how untalented I am with my legs, and that's okay because if I want to get better at soccer, I just know that's where I'm starting from, and then I can base my own improvement off of that and feel good about that, right? And like build something out of it. But yeah, you're gonna get rejected a lot. People are gonna say no to you that are wrong. People are gonna say no to you that are very right, and you should listen to why they're saying no. And you just have to listen to everything and keep a critical head on and just keep going. It's tough, but hopefully you have some sort of side income or a way to support yourself monetarily because America is not a cheap place to live.
No, like our entire thing is capitalism. Money is what gets you places.
Correct, and it is true still across the world, but very much so in America.
Yeah. I think that's all the time we have today. I want to thank all my viewers for joining in on this podcast. Jimmy, thank you so much for joining us on this. It was amazing to have you here. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate it, and best of luck to everyone out there. Keep
And
grinding.
again, everyone, check out their podcast, the Command Zone Podcast. They also have a YouTube channel. They do a lot of gameplay on there. Join their Patreon. They have some really cool people on there. I really enjoy watching them. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see all you guys in the next episode where I'll hopefully have something new.